USA hopes to be the ones to do that, and Team GM Brian Burke has made some questionable calls when putting together the roster. Was there anyone that you feel that should have been included that really wasn't?
Well, I would like to have seen somebody other than Chris Drury make the team, but I can't, pick out a guy and say this guy would have made a difference as opposed to Chris Drury. And defensively, I think that the Team USA is very average, but again, there's not a guy that I look at and say this guy would have made a big difference had he made it instead of fill in the blank. So I think he did the best with what he had, and I think, if anything, I might have gone with TJ Oshie instead of Chris Drury just for the next Olympics, if they do get to play, the NHL players get to play again in 2014, because Chris Drury is probably not going to be on that team. He shouldn't have made this team, in my opinion. So why not get a young guy some experience so that he knows what to expect in 2014, and we can make a better run at that one? Because honestly, the Americans are very young. When you look at the star players that they're putting out there, Bobby Ryan and Patrick Kane and Zach Parise among them, those guys are young, and they're going to be around in 4 years, and the experience is going to help them. I'd like to have seen a guy like TJ Oshie from your St. Louis Blues be on that team as well to get some experience. But Brian Burke certainly knows more about hockey than I do, and he thought it was worth it to have Chris Drury's leadership, and hopefully he's right.
Hopefully, but I do agree that I think TJ Oshie deserves to be on that roster. Well, it was also announced on Wednesday night that center Jeff Carter of the Flyers will be sent to Vancouver in case the recently injured Duck, Ryan Getzlaf, cannot perform for the Canadian squad. Do you think that Getzlaf will play, and if he doesn't, was Carter the right addition?
He'll play. I don't think there's any doubt that he'll play. He's going to try and play for the Ducks this weekend, so he's going to do everything he possibly can to play. And if he's out, I would have gone with Steven Stamkos myself, but I understand the idea of replacing a big man with another big man, and you want size, Jeff Carter's a good player. He's got the hands, the size, and the skill to compete at that level, but I personally like Steven Stamkos' offensive game a little bit more, and I'm not saying that Canada needs the offense. I mean, you can't go wrong. That's literally an all-star team, and whoever you pick is going to fit in just fine, I'm sure. And Steve Yzerman decided Jeff Carter, I think, because of the size factor, but if it was me, I probably would have gone with Steven Stamkos just to give myself, I think they got plenty of size. I think they got plenty of grit. I think I would have liked to see a little bit more speed and a little bit more pure goal-scoring talent on the team as opposed to another big power forward.
Well, speaking of Ryan Getzlaf and your Ducks, the Pacific Division team does find themselves 11th place and 3 points out of the 8th playoff seed at the moment. Are the Ducks buyers or sellers at the deadline?
Probably buyers and sellers in the same sense that they were last year. I think they're going to get rid of some of the guys whose contracts expire and who they don't have in their long-term plans. But I think they will not exchange those guys for picks or prospects. I think they want NHL talent in return. And I think it's going to be very similar to the Chris Kunitz for Ryan Whitney kind of trade, the Sammy Paulson for James Wisniewski trade of last year. They're going to want to get a guy that's either a restricted free agent or somebody that's under contract for at least one more year in exchange for somebody whose contract is up at the end of this year and becomes an unrestricted free agent. And the star players I don't think are going anywhere. Scott Niedermayer, Timo Solani, Saku Koivu, those guys are all staying. I think the guys that you could be seeing move out, certainly Nick Boynton, if anybody wants him, call Bob Murray immediately because he's been available for a couple weeks now. I think a guy like Kyle Chikchura could be available for the right price. James Wisniewski, even because he's a restricted free agent and they may not be able to re-sign him, is obviously on the trading block. And I think those are the pieces you'll see moving out. So there'll be a buyer and there'll be a seller at the same time.
Well, after being acquired from Toronto last Sunday for Jean-Sebastien Giguère, Jason Blake has skated in 5 games and has added 1 goal and 1 assist, while backup goaltender Vesa Taskala is still yet to play in a game, which, as we all know, has something to do with getting a work visa in the States. In your opinion, was this a smart move for the Ducks, and will these players make an impact down the road?
Well, Vesa certainly will not. At least I hope not, because he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and in order for him to play this year, something drastic would have to happen to Jonas Hiller. there, the goalie that won you the Stanley Cup just 3 years ago. You're trading him for these two spare parts, but if you look at it in the context of this season, he's the Ducks' backup goalie, and they just traded their backup goalie for a top six forward and another backup goalie. So if you can add to the problems that you have on the ice, which is scoring, then that's a good thing. I think the trade going forward, as I mentioned, Teemu Selanne and Saku Koivu's contracts are up at the end of this season. Jason Blake is signed for at least 2 more years, maybe even 3 more years. It's quite a contract that he's got that he got from Toronto a few years ago, but he's got at least 2 more years left. So that gives the Ducks, going with Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, Bobby Ryan, and Joffrey Lupul all under contract, that gives them a 5th top 6 forward that they can build around and they know is under contract, and it removes one question mark from their future schedules and their future rosters. So I think it's a good move in the sense that they took their backup goalie, who was making, by the way, $6 million on the cap next year and $7 million in physical money. Take him off the books, replace him with somebody that is going to skate on a regular basis for you in Jason Blake. Get somebody that can back up for this season in Vesna Toskala, and then is off the books. It frees up cap space in the future. It gives you more scoring depth. I think it was a good move for the Ducks and a good move for the Leafs because they needed somebody like Jay Shigear to solidify their goaltending.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest part of that trade was being able to sign Hiller to that big deal. But do you see, since you said Toskala is a restricted free agent, would you see Justin Pogge in the backup role next season?
Well, it's going to be between Justin Pogge, Timo Pielmeyer is another Ducks prospect, I believe, in Bakersfield right now because the Ducks do not have an AHL affiliate. They're the only NHL team that doesn't. So a lot of their guys are playing scattered around the AHL or in the ECHL. And it's going to be between those two, or if Bob Murray is not comfortable with either of them, doesn't think they're ready for prime time, then maybe we see them sign somebody in the offseason just purely as a backup. But there's going to be plenty available. I mean, if you look around the NHL, there's some teams carrying 3 goalies right now. So there's a gluttony of NHL quality goaltending, and if you need a starter, there's plenty available. If you need a backup, there's even more available. So I don't think the Ducks can have a problem. I think they will give Pielmeyer and Pogge every opportunity to win that backup role because it would be the cheapest alternative. Those guys are going to work dirt cheap on entry-level contracts as opposed to having to sign a free agent. Even somebody like our friend of the podcast, Jason LaBarbera, signed a $1 million deal to be the backup in Phoenix. If they can cut that down to $550,000 or $600,000 for one of the rookies, I'm sure that would be what they would prefer to do.
Right. Well, now I want to hear